Hi, I'm Matthew Montgomery. I'm a social worker and I work in the Northern Trust. I work in a team called the Intensive Support Team. We work with children and young people who are on the edge of care, and so as a result, we would work with a lot of complex and challenging behaviour and very difficult to engage children and families, often presenting with a long standing involvement with social services. We work on a very intensive basis to try and first and foremost engage children and families, and to then begin to assess the situation and create a plan moving forward to try and elicit some positive change in the family unit and within individuals, and to try and bring those children back from the edge of care and create a bit more stability within the family unit or wherever they may be. Last year I completed the postgraduate certificate, the year one in systemic and family therapy at Queen's, and this year I'm currently studying the year two postgraduate diploma. I suppose I wanted to study systemic family therapy because I felt that the approach that I was taking in my work was becoming increasingly linear. I found that we were often pathologising behaviours and focusing on the actions of family and young people, as opposed to looking at things more holistically and trying to interpret and understand the reasons behind these behaviours. I always got the sense that I was struggling to look past the behaviours and was becoming more and more led by crisis management and just getting through each day. And I suppose in that sense I felt that I was dealing with the symptoms of what was a much deeper cause and issue. Initially I struggled to come to grips with how systemic theory and practice would fit within my current role, particularly in the context of a child protection arena where things are quite rigid and quite structured. With time, however, I realised that there really didn't need to be a trade-off or an either-or approach between introducing systemic principles within my practice, and really there absolutely could be a fit between introducing systemic theory and practice within a child protection arena, and that it took time, but with some tinkering and with a lot of thought we could really introduce that and make our practice much more robust. Fundamentally for me, the first year has really shifted my thinking and my approach with families. It's encouraged me to be much more mindful of the complexity of families, and that there can be so many influencing factors behind what we may read on a referral or what we may see in front of us daily with children and families. I think the systemic approach has really helped me to empower families to have a greater say in their own lives. I found that I'm now trying to help families to help themselves, and I'm becoming much more of a facilitator, whereas before I was very much focused on task-centered work, going in and doing a lot of the work myself. The various systemic tools and systemic techniques that I learned during the first year, such as hypothesizing, using systemic questioning, reorientating myself to the usefulness of systemic tools like genograms, like eco maps, things that as social workers we would be very familiar with, but very much on more of an information gathering basis. Really reorientating myself that they can be very useful therapeutic tools when we do it with families. And that's one thing I think systemic therapy does very well, is that it's much more of a collaborative approach. One of the key pieces of learning for me was really reframing my understanding of my role, and fundamentally my role with families is to introduce difference, and where we're dealing with really complex families where we can't see the wood for the trees, if I can bring myself back to that main tenet of trying to introduce difference to them, it's something that's really, really affected my practice in a positive way. And I found that my, I suppose, thinking now of thinking systemically within practice has sort of drip fed down into my team. When we discuss cases with one another, I'm taking a much more systemic approach, and I'm trying to help them to find difference within cases. And it's really something that I think is promoting a culture within my team of being much more systemic in our thinking. I would really recommend the course to any practitioner who has direct work with families. I find that I'm a much more nuanced practitioner, and I have more practical skills as well as theoretical knowledge with which to try and elicit positive change within families. And that's something that I wanted from the start, was to have a much more broader skill set and a much more nuanced understanding of the complexity of these family systems, and to help families to navigate that themselves.